The general partner of the FIDE Online Olympiad Gazprom is sponsoring a brilliancy prize, and I've been asked to be one of the judges. Here I'm going to present the game which I've judged is in second place. I should emphasize that this is a brilliancy prize and not a best game prize. The game I'm going to show you, I think, is a superb concept, but it is flawed. Nevertheless, I really think it's a superb game. So yeah, when I was judging these games, I wasn't looking for perfection. I was looking for something inspirational, some amazing combination. Here we're going to see, I think, a brilliant concept that's carried through right from the opening to the end of the game. So here we go. My second place choice for this brilliancy prize is Vishwanathan Anand, playing for India, of course, against Parham Maghsoodloo from Iran. Now there's 30 years that separates these players. Vishy is 50 years old. Maghsoodloo has just turned 20. So here we go. Anand with the white pieces playing his traditional e4. And it's a Sicilian. And Maghsoodloo goes for this so-called Kalashnikov variation with an early e5 and then d6. This Kalashnikov variation was actually popularized by the Soviet grandmaster Yevgeny Sveshnikov, who's of course famous for the Sveshnikov variation, but he later on switched to this Kalashnikov. And Vishy plays c4, so solidly clamping black in the center with this kind of Marozzi bind. Bishop e6 and a6. The knight drops back to a3. And now g6. You don't have to play g6 here. You can develop the bishop via e7. But, well, g6 is kind of a dynamic way of playing this position. So obviously there are some similarities to the King's Indian. You never know, that f-pawn sometimes advances. And actually a common way of playing this position is exactly that. Play the knight to e7 and then play f5. But Maghsoodloo goes for knight f6. A little bit different. So he would like to play knight g4. So that's prevented by bishop e2. So Vishy setting up in a very classical, traditional way. Good development of his minor pieces, as one would expect from Vishy. Rook c8 starts perhaps a little bit of pressure down the c-file, so the pawn on c4 is protected. Nice solid pawn chain. Castles by Maghsoodloo, castles by Vishy. Now previously in this position we've seen queen a5, but Maghsoodloo plays a new move here, and well, it's a really daring idea. He plays pawn to b5. Now, in theory, this is a very nice idea. You want to try to break down white's centre. This pawn on c4 obviously cramps black in the middle of the board. But it does give up a pawn. Pawn takes pawn. So is it worth it? Well, let's have a look. That's a really nice idea here. Instead of recapturing the pawn here, knight e7 opens up this c-file for the rook. And the knight doesn't want to move because that knight is protecting the pawn on e4. So Vishy drops back with the bishop. Now pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn. So black is a clear pawn down here. So what's the idea? Well, first of all, queen b6 from Maghsoodloo looks reasonable. bringing the queen out to a nice square, looking down this diagonal, looking at the bishop. So yeah, a little bit of pressure here. Rook takes knight and queen takes bishop threatened. And also he's connecting the rooks. I do like connected rooks. Good idea. Now Vichy comes back with the knight, protecting the bishop, and perhaps he's thinking of moving the knight or perhaps bishop into c4. And here, well, Maghsoodloo really goes for it. He plays in quite a radical way. With black, you could play d5 here. And I think this is a very logical way of playing the position, because what black wants to do is, well, to claim the centre. And you can see that because black has an extra centre pawn, then I think certainly black has compensation here. I think that's a reasonable way of playing for black. But this is more extreme. Maghsoodloo has sacrificed a pawn, and now he sacrifices an exchange. Bishop takes rook, and knight takes pawn. So the idea is he's completely destroying Anand's centre, and he's leaving himself with two centre pawns. So in a way, it's a very positional sacrifice. This is long-term compensation he's looking for here. He's not winning material back anytime soon. The bishop is attacked, drops back to b2, and Maghsoodloo starts to roll the pawns in the centre. So it's an impressive lineup for black here. Those centre pawns supported by all these minor pieces, and the knight looking good on e4. But if you look at Anand's position, well, it's pretty solid. The king doesn't have many pieces around it, but the pawns are still intact. f2 is supported. And on the queen side, well, they need a bit of sorting out, but white is solid enough. Let's have a look. So Vichy brings the bishop back to e2. Yeah, slightly vulnerable there, so why not? Now you could, with black, just drop that knight back and hope to push those pawns, but Maghsoodloo is in a hurry. d4. Now, if white isn't careful, then that knight will come into d5, and then one of those knights will land on c3, and, well, we're talking octopuses here. That could be a real beauty of an octopus on c3. So Vichy has to fight back, and there is a downside to pushing that pawn to d4 so quickly. Knight c4. So Anand claims that nice c4 square. Now the queen could drop back, but like I said, Maghsoodloo is in a hurry. I mean, that characterises his play so far in this game. Bishop takes knight. Gives up a bishop, but he wants, well, when I say give it up, gives up bishop for knight. So that is a compromise, but he just doesn't want to slow down. He sees his queen is in a good position, prepared to give up bishop for knight, removes the knight from the centre, and starts to free those centre pawns. That's his plan. Push those centre pawns and then have a look what happens next. Bishop a3, but those bishops are looking pretty tasty, it's got to be said. Knight e to f5. So protects that knight, and black is ready to push those pawns. Rook c1, e4, here they go, stomping down the board. Bishop c5, Anand brings one of the bishops into play, attacks the queen. Of course, if queen takes bishop, then bishop takes pawn check, and rook takes queen. So black's queen is attacked and has to drop back. Queen d8. So rook e1. So those centre pawns look dangerous, but it has to be said, Anand is playing, well, very typically, very sensibly. His pieces are in good positions. Does black have enough for the exchange? Rook e8, supporting the pawn on e4 and unpins that knight. It's hard to know what to do for white here. Anand decides to push the b pawn, but those queenside pawns are pretty slow. But at least the b pawn protects the bishop on c5. I mean, there are various things you could play here. Maybe bishop f1 to support the king a little bit, but feels a bit passive. Anyway, b4 doesn't look unreasonable. Then knight takes bishop, rook takes, and e3. So this is a very logical strategy. Maghsoodloo has pushed these centre pawns, and what he's doing now is starting to open up white's king. And particularly as there are no minor pieces around the king, then this is potentially dangerous. So e3. Anand exchanges and knight takes e3, attacking the rook on c4. It's an octopus. He's managed to get a knight deep into the heart of Anand's position, and that knight just looks really menacing and is right in the face of all those major pieces, the two rooks and the queen, and looks towards the king as well. So that is quite a piece. The queen is attacked, the rook is attacked. Now Anand can save himself by playing queen a4. Of course that knight is pinned because of rook takes rook. So rook e6 unpins. So knight takes rook is now threatened. So the rook drops back to c1. Now Maghsoodloo plays a move which is inaccurate. He plays the queen to d5, which is a glorious square for the queen. But h5 is a better move. It gives the king an escape square. You can see the back rank is a little bit weak. So the king would have an escape square after h5. Potentially that pawn could advance again. But actually, now that the back rank is secure, then black can play bishop e5 and queen h4 and start to attack white's king. There are only two pawns in front of white's king. You look at black's king, completely secure. That is one of the big advantages that black has in this position. A safer king position compared to white's. So I think h5 would have been a nice move. Queen d5 is also certainly not bad, but white is still in the game there. Mate is threatened. It's certainly not a bad move though. Mate is threatened. Rook e2 defends. And again, h5 I think would be a good move to just guard the back rank. You can see that black has to be careful here. If that queen manages to land on a8 or e8, then the king could be in trouble. And here, in fact, Maghsoodloo blunders. He plays pawn to d3. Basically, he's in a hurry. That's been his MO for the entire game. He's just bold, straightforward, beautiful initiative. And d3 feels very logical. And here Anand, well, he misses a big chance. He believes Maghsoodloo. He trusts him and blockades that pawn. He could have taken that knight. Now, it feels as though bishop d4 is just a winning move. Pin and win. But in fact, there is a move that defends. Queen a7. Now, that's optically, I think, very, very difficult to see, particularly in rapid play. In fact, there's an X-ray defense here. So, for example, if bishop takes rook, check, then bishop takes bishop, white remains a piece up and should win. And if rook takes rook, then bishop takes d4. Again, white is a piece up, threatens the rook, and even threatens a deadly check on the back rank. Again, white should be winning. It's a remarkable defense. Let's just see that again. Rook takes knight, bishop d4, Queen A7. Incredible defending. That's what Vichy missed. Easy to do. D3 looks so powerful, and Vichy believed him. He played rook D2, blockading the pawn, and now bishop D4 is a crushing move with threats against the king. King H1, and now Maghsoodloo crashes in with knight takes G2. If rook takes, then rook E2 pins and wins in the game. Anand played queen B3. Of course, he's desperate to exchange queens. But after queen A8, he resigned. That's a beautiful final move. The queen just as powerful on A8 as from D5. And the king has no escape. Let's just go through possible conclusion. If rook takes knight, then rook E2 threatens queen G2 mate. And if rook G1, well, queen G2 is still checkmating. Rook E1, and then rook G1 mate. Or after queen A8, if bishop takes bishop, knight F4 check, discovered check. King G1, knight H3, and now the queen swoops down the diagonal. Queen H1, and queen takes bishop, checkmate. Well, I thought that was a brilliant concept from Maghsoodloo. From the moment he played B5, his idea was to destroy white's centre. And having done that, with a great exchange sacrifice, he then proceeded to advance his centre pawns, and he used those centre pawns to get through to white's king. And then, well, there was a little hiccup in there, but basically his strategy succeeded beautifully, and here he managed to crash through, and that was a beautiful final position. So that's my choice for second place in the Gazprom Brilliancy Prize. I'll be announcing my choice for first place tomorrow, although I know that many of you will know already or will be able to guess my choice for first place already. Thanks for watching.